Welcome to the Midweek End Times News and Trends briefing as we share major events and what is happening around the world as it relates to Bible prophecy. And today's date is March 2nd, 2016. In last week's update, we talked about the ceasefire that was going to happen before it happened in Friday, Saturday time. And this week, I would like to open up how that ceasefire has not continued. According to Reuters, a Syrian opposition says government wrecking truce deal. A senior official from Syrian's main opposition group said on Monday that the fragile international attempt has halted nearly 5 years of fighting and was in danger of collapse because of attacks by government forces. The ending of hostilities drawn up by Washington and Moscow faced complete nullification because of Syrian government attacks were violating the agreement, said the official of Saudi-backed opposition High Negotiation Committee. And France said that there was reports of attacks on opposition forces in breach of the deal, which came into force on Saturday. And countries backing the Syrian peace process met to try to clarify the situation. UN Secretary King Moon said that the pause in the fighting was largely upheld, despite some incidents that he hoped to contain. The Kremlin said the process was underway, although it had been clear that it would not be easy, and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said efforts being made to track down alleged violations, but there was currently no evidence to suggest it would destabilize the fragile peace. So as we're going to see, this sort of instability within the Middle East, and especially in Syria, it is going to be a difficult process, which we know is not going to happen. There's going to continue to be escalations of war, and when we make these sort of statements, we're seeing it from a biblical point of view as we see these things unfold. So it's not like we're not trying to be hopeful about the situation. We just see what as it relates to Bible prophecy. On to another issue. This took place in Sweden, and this concerned an Australian TV 60 Minutes film crew, as they're doing a program on the migration process. But while they're there, the 60 Minutes TV crew was attacked and beaten by some of the refugees. So they had found the way to an immigrant, dense suburban area in Stockholm, called Rinkeby. And after the visit of the journalists said that they had been to Somalia and Syria and Iraq, but they've never experienced conditions similar to those that are happening in Sweden. The TV crew got an insight into the Swedish multicultural society that they're never going to forget. So what happened as the TV crew was in Stockholm in this particular suburban area to depict the mass immigration that's happening in Sweden, they're doing some interviews with some local residents, and the team barely got into this town before it was attacked for the first time, writing in this particular article. When the cameraman from 60 Minutes got out of the car, suddenly a car came up close to him and beside him. And the African driver of the car began to argue about why they were filming in this town. And after a few minutes, he ran across the cameraman's foot, who stumbled to the ground and laying in agony. Another cameraman filmed the whole incident while it was happening. After a while, the Australians wanted to go into the town square, but the police had to stay behind outside not to provoke the residents. And inside this particular square, the film crew talked with the residents who didn't seem aggressive, but who were told about how good life was in this town there in Sweden, with so many different cultures, and they said that they're enjoying it there. But when the police suddenly disappeared without telling the news crew, the group of unmasked men suddenly circled the cameramen, and one of the cameramen was attacked and hit with a clenched fist over his mouth. A bottle was then thrown at the camera. Meanwhile, another cameraman was attacked and punched in the mouth so that a tooth came loose. And so the TV team quickly decided to leave the area with pictures and filming of everything that had happened. And they told the journalists from this report that they had, again, been to Somalia, been to Syria and Iraq, but they've never experienced anything like this anywhere. So we're going to see more escalation of violence and attacks throughout Europe, and especially as the media is reporting the situation. For example, another report that came out of the Daily Mail that had a similar story. There was this British refugee campaigner who was pelted with rocks in a jungle migrant camp in Calais while talking live to Sky News as French authorities were dismantling the sprawling centre after a court ruling. So this particular volunteer, his name was Simon, was urging David Cameron, the Prime Minister of Britain, to let 6,500 people living in the camp when stones were flying by, forcing the reporter Mark Stone to interrupt him and saying that we're going to move further down the bank because they're throwing rocks at us. And he said this before ducking to avoid some stones. And so the incident took place as helmeted workers began to make pulling down the makeshift structures that the migrants were sleeping and were located to kind of more of a permanent building accommodations. And so there's these bulldozers and workers trying to dismantle the camp there. But it's kind of a sense of irony as this whole story was unfolding, that how much more of a perfect it would be for the moment for one of the refugee supporters that's championing their causes when the same people turn against him and the sympathetic journalist team and attempt to stone them. So it's just kind of an ironic story that was taking place, and how they're trying to make this whole situation seem to be better than it really is, and then all of a sudden you have these refugees attacking the guy that's for them and also the news reporter. Onto an economic issue, as this report came out on Monday about how China devalues the yuan as stocks crash, and this came out of the Breitbart report. China's devaluing its currency and stocks crashing 3%, and capital flight accelerating. So China has cut back its bank reserve requirements fee up to close to $100 billion in credit, facing the pressure from a capital flight that the Chinese allowed their yuan currency to devalue to 6.6% or 6.6 yuan to the dollar on February 29th, causing the local stock markets to crash by 3 to 5% to levels that has not been seen since the late 2014. And trying to stop the rout, China's central bank cuts its deposit reserve requirements to a ratio of 50 base points to 17% in the effort to free up $100 billion in new credit for the world's second largest economy. So the cut marks for the fifth time in the last 12 months, but the first time since October 23rd, that China has reduced bank solvency to deal with the financial panic, according to Stafford Global Alliance. And as we mentioned time and time again about these economic collapse that will be happening, and it's getting closer and closer with every country and upon the global markets, where we're starting to see more stock markets crash. We're seeing the devaluing of the currencies, and it's just going to continue to escalate to an economic collapse. For example, Venezuela. This report came out not only on Sunday on one of the reports, but this one was a month earlier out of the Washington Post that talks about Venezuela is on the brink of complete economic collapse. So the only question is whether Venezuela's government or economy will completely collapse first. And the key word there in that article was the word completely. Both are well into their death throes, and indeed Venezuela's ruling party just lost the congressional elections that gave opposition a veto-proof majority, and it's hard to see whether it's going to get any better for them anytime soon, or for that matter, ever. The incumbents, after all, don't intend to do well when, according to the International Monetary Funds, when their economy shrinks 10% in one year, an additional 6% the next, and the inflation explodes 720%. So no wonder that the market expects Venezuela to default on its debt in the very near future. So basically, this country is bankrupt. So that's what the Washington Post put out the other month. Another report that came out concerning Venezuela, this one came out of naturalnews.com, and the title of the article was "Venezuela Collapses into Food Police State. Biometric scanning into government databases are required to purchase food." So within this article, it talked about the nickname Fingerprints for Food program, but it represents a new kind of a dire twist in the ongoing struggle for the socialist Venezuela government to provide basic nourishment and products for its citizens. As reported back in May of 2014 out of the Miami Herald, that the President, Nicolas Maduro, ordered the implementation of biometrics to allow the government to track what customers of state-owned groceries were purchasing and perhaps, as importantly, how much. So the president also reported to the paper, said that the measure was necessary to prevent hoarding and to help keep the price-controlled food from being resold for a profit. So even then, food was increasingly in short supply, and this was back 2 years ago in May of 2014. But we're starting to see the increasing of short supply, and that's even before the global oil prices collapsed due to glut. And so Venezuela is receiving 95% of its revenues from oil, but in order to convince hungry Venezuelans to voluntarily register for the program, the food minister, Felix Orsoro, promised that anyone who signed up and gave the government their fingerprints would be eligible for discounts and prizes. You know, it kind of sounds very similar to the way things will be in the tribulation period when the mark of the beast is implemented, that you can't buy or sell unless you have the mark of the beast, in a very similar way here. On to another issue, and this is something that's going to increase, especially in these end times, and we're going to see several of this report today. But each week it seems like it continues to come up because every person's affected by this in one way or another, whether it's in the school place, in the workplace, etc. This is going to be one of those big social issues, cultural issues, and there's a lot of repercussions for standing for your faith. This report came out of in Texas, and it's from the christiannews.net. And the title of the report was, "Texas Bakers Receive Death Threats for Offering Referral Rather Than Making Cake for Gay Couple," or a gay wedding. So the couple that owns this bakery are Christian, and we're starting to receive these death threats after referring these two homosexual men rather than being involved with the same-sex ceremony by making their cake for the reception. According to the reports, this couple, the homosexual couple, went into this bakery in Longview earlier in the month with a photograph of what they want their cake to look like. And as they went into the store, they originally just went in to get a quote, and they're explaining that he and this couple, they talked with the owners of the bakery for some time without any issue, and so the baker asked, "Well, who is this for?" And that's when the couple looked at each other, and obviously it was for them and their wedding. And that's when the baker, Delorme, who attends a Baptist church there in Texas, explained because of their faith, the bakery could not be involved in this event. "It's not against people or what they choose to be a part of," she told the men. She also talked about how she offered to provide recommendations for other bakeries. And that's when the homosexual couple just walked out. The men then took to media after several days later, to which in turn they contacted the bakery about the alleged discrimination. The baker said that she would understand if a business didn't want to associate with a particular event, but as noted from this bakery, they've turned down cakes for other reasons. For example, they said that we don't do alcohol-related cakes or risque cakes. We've turned down cakes for, can you make a giant skull can? And that's just not something that, it's not that we just single out one for one particular reason. So there's other reasons why they don't bake certain cakes, not just because they're against people or anything like that. We feel like we're going to be if we're going to put our name on something, we want it to encourage godly values, she stated. So after the matter went public, many lashed out at this bakery, posting negative and vulgar and angry views on Yelp, such as "see you in hell" and "their cakes taste like, blank expletive," and But some of the post reviews show support to them. These bakers did not deny gays business because they were gay. They chose not to make a gay wedding cake. If this homosexual couple, they came in and they asked for just a normal birthday cake, they wouldn't have had a problem or deny their service. It's not a problem there. And according to another report of someone who gave a review, his name's John, he said, "Sorry to deny your self-victimization pity party, but there's no discrimination happening here, none at all." Another reporter that gave a response said, "Sorry for the vile response. The hate is thick in this crowd." And he said, "Keep the faith, keep making all the yummy goodies. See you next time I come through the town." Yelp says it will be taking down some of the comments because they're not bona fide reviews of the personal customer service. And according to Michael Berry, an attorney with First Liberty in Plano, told the Houston Chronicle that the bakers, DeLorme's, are receiving death threats as a result of the matter going public. And so, again, this is more of the mom and pop shop, and they're starting now to get all these crazy reviews and negative and death threats. And when that happens, something is seriously wrong. It gets real ugly, and unfortunately, but that's the real effect that's happening on this bakery and also the employees. So we're going to see more of these sort of places get attacked for their belief, and because they're not going to participate in a homosexual wedding with baking the cakes for them. And again, there shouldn't be a problem if they're not going to do it. You just go to somewhere else. You don't have to threaten them. You don't have to bash them or commit any hate crime against them. You just respect their views to move on. And then another one came out of the ChristianToday.com on Monday, February 29th, about a Christian student expelled from university for quoting Bible on homosexuality. So this student, who is a Christian, married with 4 children, has been expelled from his university because he wrote a post on Facebook opposing gay marriage. Felix Nogel, who is 38 years old, was asked to leave the University of Sheffield, and where he was in the second year of a master's in social work. And he's appealing against this decision, which came after members of the faculty decided that he might have caused offense to some people for expressing his support of Kim Davis and the clerk, the Kentucky clerk jailed who refused the issue of same-sex licenses last year. But in the comments in the Facebook profile, which were not visible to anyone outside of his circle of friends, he quoted Leviticus, which supports the biblical teaching on marriage and sexual ethics. The post was then brought to the attention of the faculty of the school, and they had a problem with his views on this, and so they ended up pretty much letting him go. And he said later on in another post in a report, said, "My beliefs about marriage and sexual ethics reflect mainstream biblical understanding shared by millions around the world. Simply expressing that understanding in a personal capacity on my Facebook page cannot be allowed to become the bar to serve and help others in a professional capacity as a social worker." So the university is saying that he's not fit to work in social services because of his biblical worldview. So we're going to see more of these sort of reports happening. And then lastly, there was a report that came out of this one happened in California, in Indio, a school there, where this anti-gay sticker at a high school touch off debate, hate speech or free speech. And this came out of the Los Angeles local news, that the students displaying anti-LGBT sticker at a high school in Indio have touched off a debate whether it's free speech or hate speech. So the sticker shows a kind of a rainbow, a symbol of the gay community, with a line across through it. And the officials said that the sticker has increasingly showed up all over the past several weeks. Some students' ID badges show Shadow Hills High School, as well as on the media websites. The increasing number of the stickers caused an outcry at the school among students and faculty. Many call it hate speech. The senior and vice president of the Gay and Straight Alliance, Michelle Bachmann, said on Twitter that the stickers were definitely hate speech, but legally we can't do until these students start to physically harass us, which I believe is an injustice. The school district administrators said that the students have the right to display stickers just as pro-LGBT students would. And an email that was sent to the staff on Wednesday to the Desert Stands Unified School District administrators said, after consulting with the personal level and legal counsel, it was determined that these students do have the protected rights to freedom of speech, just as the students portraying the rainbow's support of LGBT would. So the school district said that these stickers led to actual verbal or physical harassment. That would be going too far. So, and they also said that every person has an opinion, but if there is harassment or bullying, then that crosses the line. And that should also be stated, it goes both ways. There should be respect for one another instead of defamating and destroying property or putting people down because of their views. The article also went on to say that if at any point students are interrupting class to express their views, they are to be sent to the discipline office with a referral for disruption. And the school district also said that we have the right to freedom of speech, but students also have a right to be educated without fear. This has always been our policy and we'll continue to enforce it. Well, hopefully that stays true, where they're not going to continue to ram down the homosexual LGBT agenda because it puts Christians in fear because you have no choice or voice in this situation. And we bring this up, again, on a weekly basis because it is such a major problem and a major issue in society. It's now affecting our school system. It's affecting the workplaces and people's employments because they may not agree with it, but they're going to get fired because of it. And so it's going to get worse and worse as this issue continues on. And then lastly, this report came out on Tuesday out of the Charisma News. This one was kind of an opinion column and how the atheists drive word of God out of government facility in the name of inclusivity. So there was a POW MIA display in Ohio Veterans Administration Clinic after the notorious Military Religious Freedom Foundation complained so that they want to get rid of the scriptures or the Bible that was in some of the displays. The religious artifacts were part of a missing man table recently erected by volunteers at an outpatient clinic in Arcon in Ohio. The founder alleged the inclusion of the Bible was a violation of U.S. Constitution, and he said he intervened at the request of nearly dozens, mostly Christians, military veterans who utilized the clinic. The clinic administrator, Brian Reinhardt, said to his knowledge that no one's ever complained. In other words, Mr. Weinsted's allegations are a bit dubious. Nevertheless, Reinhardt relented and evicted God's Word from the display. He just wanted to let you know that the Bible has been removed from our POW table and the Bible verses has been removed from the framed scripture. He wrote in an email to the other man that's claiming the issue, the situation. So we're starting to see more of these, how the Bible's being removed from society, from museums to other key components, that it's never been an issue before, and now it's now becoming an issue. And this is where you're starting to see the attack of Satan, especially on God's word. We're starting to see the silencing of Christians, the punishing of Christians, the persecutions, the removal of God's work from public places. Anything that is of good standing or morally right is slowing, eroding away from society. And you see this liberal agenda, which is really influenced by Satan, taking place. And each week, as the world is getting closer and closer to what will be the tribulation period, we don't know when that's going to happen. These are all signs of the times that are happening. The destruction of morality, of biblical values, the deception that's taken place, the instability in the Middle East, in Israel, and throughout Europe and other parts of the world, the crashing economies, the deception and destruction of Satan's plan and agenda is ever increasing. So much more that is happening on such a radical scale. It's hard to really keep track of everything that's happening. So, as we say, stay informed, friends. Keep in the loop of what's going on, so you're equipped with the news and the information, and you stand to your convictions. Stay close to Jesus. And that concludes this midweek update. Thank you for tuning in, and God bless.